How's it going, everyone? Hope you're having a good day so far wherever you are. This is the, I believe, final part of the Chimera Draconic Druid Shadow Shamanism Atavistic Alchemy series. I think you all get the point. If not, by the end of this video, you should. And if not, then feel free to email me or ask me questions. I want to discuss degrees so that it's very clear to all of you that this isn't something that you have to do in full force all the time. If you are choosing to use the elemental aspects and the sidereal aspects or the stellar astronomical aspects, you are probably going to be calling in more force than if someone is just doing it generally. That's not always the case, but it probably is most of the time for most of you. But even if so therefore, you don't necessarily need to call in the energies of 3 or 7 or 15 different constellations, especially them being constellations, because as I've mentioned, they're aggregate, they're fragmented to some degree, at least from our perspective. So, if you are calling in elemental and astronomical aspects, consider how much you're doing, and consider that whatever you decide to be your full formula, you might save that for really tough moments and stick to the bottom of it most of the time, or the middle. Now, those of you who are not getting into the alchemy of this and the elements, perhaps you're just doing this to assist with astral travel, sort of like a rising on the planes exercise. Keep in mind, you're still calling in, you're still invoking certain forces, and they are, in many cases, especially if you're invoking more primal forces like the constellations of Draco or Hydra or etc. These can build up over time. So the corresponding animals and fauna, so to speak, if you're using more primal forces, these things can build up over time, and these can have effects. So keep in mind the degree to which you are channeling, invoking, utilizing these things, and make sure you're paying attention to when you are. Was there anything else? I had a little card here. Yeah, so if you are in your full formula, doing something like having or imagining or projecting horns and wings and a scorpion tail and all of these different things, keep in mind that if you're just going about your daily life, you don't need to imagine that you're walking around as this thing all the time. For some of you, it can be beneficial to do so, especially for short periods of time. But beware of things like dysmorphia and delusion and things like that, but also be aware of the parts of your psyche and psychophysiology, biophysiology that you are activating and calling on. The other thing that this does is it allows for degrees. So much like I mentioned, if you're going to use elemental filters to open your gates, that if you use symbols that have 4 or 5 gestures to them, so like the element of wind or air is like an upward triangle with a line, right? That allows you 25, 50, 75, 100% of control over that gate. This does the same thing. if you are calling on just your swan wings, or if you're calling on just your dragon wings, or if you're calling on just your whatever it is, that's a small degree, especially if it is something like a swan instead of a dragon. This can help you feel better or more capable in that instance. And in doing so, you open yourself up to parts of yourself that you are currently blind to or are, locking yourself off from. Whereas if you, so let's throw the cherubic chimera up as a reference. A anthropomorphized Aquarius, lion, Leo with bull horns, Taurus, swan wings, Cygnus, and a scorpion tail, Scorpio. If we think about that chimera, and someone is going to invoke that full thing, that might be like in their most dire circumstances, for instance. And that way, they are creating an aperture, so to speak. And you have degrees. Intentionally getting a little bit redundant here because I'm trying to get this point across, because I want to avoid some of you just going full throttle on this all the time, because it does have psychophysiological as well as biophysiological effects. But it allows you an aperture, like I said. Was there anything else? I don't think so. Let me know if you have any questions or suggestions. Check out the playlists, and let me know if there's any other topics that you want me to cover that I haven't covered so far. Take care.